everyone. We are live this evening. Miss Clark, Miss Edmond, and myself, Miss Mitchell. And today we want to have a spirited interaction and discourse on the very interesting topic of parental alienation, which seems to be the new buzzword in custody and access matters in courts abroad, and the term has made its way into our own courts. So we want to discuss it with some sort of depth, speak about our own experiences with it. Miss Edmond, you had a very interesting experience with parental alienation because I was saying to Miss Clark this afternoon as we were discussing the possibility of this particular discussion. When it is this court steps in to act as a de facto parent, and the court decided to strip your daughter away from you, the court was in fact alienating you from your daughter, which I
Mhm.
find is such a wonderful example and one that we might tend to overlook or to miss, we might miss the whole significance of such an interaction. When we think of parental alienation, we think of two warring parents or former spouses, but
Mhm.
we have never really considered it from the perspective or the standpoint of a parent and an institution. And I think your story, your particular experience is an excellent standpoint from which to start this evening.
Well, I think, hi, good afternoon. Let me say good afternoon to everyone that is watching and those who are listening. Um, I think that before we could even discuss um, alienation by an institution, because I think it's something that happens quite often based on various circumstances. And I will explain what I mean in a little bit. So I will talk about parental alienation in terms of its definition
Mhm.
so that people will understand what we're talking about. Um, the definition of parental alienation is often confused by persons in the general public with what we call parental estrangement. It's different. It's two different things. Alienation is where one of the parents actively seeks to let the other parent, seeks to basically alienate the child from the other parent. So they would do things that would cause the other parent not to be able to have contact. So, for example, something like um, the child had a phone, you take the phone away, the child cannot call the parent, right? That is seeking to alienate the child from the parent so that they have no contact or they have minimal contact, right? People do these things for different reasons, and we'll get into that later on. But things like that what we're talking about when we're talking about parental alienation, right? Moving from one jurisdiction to another. And we're not talking, I moved from San Fernando and I moved to Chaguanas. That's not parental alienation, right? It may become more difficult for the other parent, right? If I move from one place to another, but it's still possible for you to see the child, right? It just is a little more difficult. In terms of jurisdiction, what I'm talking about is you living in Trinidad and the person moved to um, another island or another country altogether. That is alienation because the other parent, one, they may not know where the child is, and two, they obviously may not have the finances to go looking who have $2,000-3,000 to go and see, or how much ever it costs to go to whatever jurisdiction, right? Let's say they go to England, they move and they go to England to Trinidad, from Trinidad to England is about $8,000 or $9,000. The average person doesn't have that, so that is in fact alienating the other parent, right? So that's what we're talking about when we're talking about parental alienation. Um, in terms of, like, you just move to another location because of financial issues, safety issues, whatever. it's not on the same level because you still have the opportunity to see a child. Even if the child goes to Tobago, because Trinidad and Tobago is one country, right? Even if it becomes harder, but there's the TNT Spirit, which is $50, I believe, and $300 by plane. So you still have that level of contact, right? The aim of parental alienation, as I said before, is for you to lose access. For you to lose access, the other parent, for them to lose access and contact with the child. Because a lot of times parents say they're brainwashing the child, the other parent, that they're trying to alienate. They're brainwashing the child. They're talking ill of the parent. They're doing all those different things, which is causing confusion in the child. So they often would try to limit that by by alienating the child from the parent, right? Sometimes, well, for me, I think in the majority of cases where alienation is concerned, it is malicious. It is not, I am trying to protect my child, I am trying to, it's not necessarily that. It's more vicious, vindictive, and all those different negative emotions that are, and of course, too, I want to hurt the other parent actively. Because for a lot of parents, their relationship with their child is paramount and it's one of the most important things to them. So if you remove that relationship or you hinder it in any sort of way, it is going to hurt the parent. So so I just wanted to get that clear before we go discussing any other thing. In terms of what we call estrangement, a lot of times people use alienation when they mean estrangement. I haven't seen my daughter in 5 months because the mother trying to keep her away from me. The truth of the matter is you have made no attempt to see your daughter in 5 months. That is what they often do, right? And they use the term parental alienation to say that the mother is or the other parent is actively seeking to cut ties with them when that is not the truth. So we have to understand that very clearly when we having these discussions.
Well, I knew you would start with a definition, and that's why I started with you. Because I knew you would start off by giving a definition. And why I also started with you is because while we might be tempted to just see two parties, two individuals, what I find is so significant about you is that the court stepped in and took the place of a parent in your child's life and cut you out of your daughter's life completely.
Okay,
And
so let me discuss that a little bit
mhm,
because um I don't really see it as alienation by the state, but let's discuss it, right?
mhm,
What happened was um there was an allegation in the court but
yep,
made by the other parent,
that's
right?
right. Mhm,
The other parent would have stated, oh, no, let me backtrack. There was a disclosure at my daughter's school about something that happened, right? And of course, they did their protocols and all those different things. The police were called. Um, we had to go to the local health center. We got to the station. We made the report, not report, our statement. And the next day, I was in court and my child was removed, right?
mhm.
Now, there was no investigation. There was nothing of the sort. My child was simply removed. I had been told at the time that is the protocol, etc. Now, my issue with that is or was that one, there was not any investigation that took place. The second thing was that um, when you have such reports being made, as I said in our last conversation, if it was that um, the allegation was not made against me, which is the parent, then the child should not have been removed, because at that point my child was did not know anybody else, right? She was in my care for up to that point 10 years of her life, right? Um, and in my estimation, I would have felt or thought then that the person for whom the allegation was made, that person should have been asked to leave, because you are talking about the stability and the well-being of a child. The allegation was not made against me, right? So in my estimation, I would have felt that those two things were the major downfalls of what happened in my instance, right? Now the next thing is that when we had the um, trial and all of that happening, I was also named later on. I was also named as there were charges that were brought against me, right? That I had to answer to. And at that point, it was very shocking to me, because I'm like, how can you make these claims, the court that is, that were never reported? One, I was totally unaware of everything that was happening at the time, right? It was the first time that I had heard of anything. And then as we went along, I am also named as party two, right? I am also named as party two. Now, I didn't have an issue with being named a party, because obviously it's my child, and they start to do their investigations, whatever. Certain things were revealed, etc. And the police would have had to do well. Actually, the police were not the ones that it was really, really weird, because the police never actually charged me. The charges arose out of the court. So I still have no understanding of how that happened, but that is what um happened, right?
But if I may say, right, from what I am listening, right, and I'm hearing, we hear the term parental alienation, but in my humble opinion, I am seeing by the state court, they are alienating children from their parents.
Well,
So
this is
from the
what I was saying. This is what I
Mhm,
was saying. In a lot of these type of cases, that is what their protocol dictates, right?
mhm,
And it is, in fact, in some of the cases detrimental, because in a lot of the cases, the where the child is at, where they reside, that's all they know. They've known nothing else up to that point. Now, if it is that the initial report was against me, then I could say, yes, remove the child, do what you have to do, right? But it was not initially against me, right? And in that case, if they had to do like emergency appearances and such like that, then you should have made, at that point in time, you should have made a ruling that the other party who was named needed to be out of the situation. They needed to leave, right? But that's not what happened. What happened was the child was removed. I attended court, and then more charges were um, created.
but
And I say
but
the word charges because I endured a trial, a literal trial for 3 years.
but looking at your case and looking at children who are placed in homes,
Hmm.
both parents, sometimes I've heard that neither parents or parties involved in the decision making of their children. And if we are saying parental alienation more or less is between two parents, my concern has been why is the state, aka the judiciary, using their powers to separate children from their parents? That has been a major concern of mine.
Yeah, I think that a lot of the times the as I said before, the investigation comes later. It's not done before and then we go and we make an arrest, right? It's I don't know if that is how it is now, but this was 14 years ago. So I don't know if that was how it was then, and I'm just saying what my experience was, right? The investigation took place later, after. So, and I guess in cases of abuse, child neglect, and those sorts of things, they consider removing the children as the best interest of the children because you don't want abuse to continue, right?
But
So,
Mr. Edmond,
mhm,
the Children Act, there's a part when, let's say that we make a child order the court, or that we place a child into temporary a place of safety. The
mhm,
Act clearly states that an application will be brought whether by an authority, taken both parents, mother and father, ought to be involved, right? Upon hearing based on the preliminary investigation, upon hearing the evidence, the child then becomes a ward of the court for the minimum of 7 days. After the 7 days, if both parents are deemed as unfit in this regard, the minor child is then placed in an institution under the care of the state. Now, removing children, I didn't hear you say anything about your child being awarded the court. My concern is, where was any application? Were you served any summons? Were you given any notice that your child would have been taken out of your care?
I think we lost her there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well,
But
Michelle, this is shocking.
what is interesting there? We have to make the distinction between something that is done for a child's protection,
Yes.
because you want to say that the state decides that us err on the side of caution,
Mm-hmm.
just in case there is merit to the accusation or allegation. You
Mhm.
don't want the child to be further subjected to any type of abuse.
Mm-hmm.
That's one thing. But then, when you take it upon yourself with no investigation, no preliminary investigation,
Mm-hmm.
no sort of investigation,
Mm-hmm.
and there is no preparation, and you just yank a child out,
Mm-hmm.
but there was nothing clinical about it. There was nothing that showed any measure of thought. There was nothing that showed strategy. It was tactlessly done. An allegation was made, rip the child out.
But is that recorded? Is it not?
That's what I'm thinking now. There's
Mhm.
confusion in the mind of that child.
Yes, yes.
How do you know the child doesn't think that mommy sent me away because mommy's upset with me? How do you know what the child is being fed wherever the child is? And I'm talking about emotionally and psychologically. And
mhm,
that is why I'm looking at it as alienation.
yeah,
Because even when there are allegations against a parent, the child is still allowed to have supervised phone calls. There was absolutely no type of interaction. There was no communication. Who knows what was going on in the mind of the child? And if it is, the state did not, okay, there was no investigation, but was there psychological intervention on the part for the child?
no.
Well, okay then.
The only psychological intervention that happened was during the investigation to find out whether or not the allegations were true, and that was it.
So they
Just
put in the
so
cart
you
and
are looking to substantiate or to verify whether an allegation is true. but you're not studying what this entire upheaval would have done to a child emotionally, psychologically, listen to me,
There
developmentally,
were no orders as to
attachment with
um,
the parent.
there were no orders as to she needed to be evaluated or anything of the sort. It just was the probation officer. She needed to see the probation officer, and she needed to see the top. At the time, she was the top
Child
child
psychologist.
psychologist, yeah, in Trinidad,
Okay.
and that the only reason was, as I said, was to determine whether or not the allegations were true,
So, Miss
right?
Mitchell, I'm asking myself, right? Is it, and Mr. Edmund, is it that the court's claim to us parents, they don't go by hearsay? Is this a case of where the court acted on hearsay?
Well, you
Well,
see,
the hearsay would have been because when we went to the hospital, there was no evidence of anything. So at that point in time, I was thinking, okay, well, no evidence. Well, we're going home. We had to go to the station. They took our statement, her statement. I did my statement later. And at the station was when I was told, well, we have to decide where she's going now. And I'm like, what? What do you mean? There's the doctor paper say no evidence of anything. And now you are telling me I have to decide where my child, who has been living in my care for the last 10 years of her life, where she has to go? What are you talking about? And the father was very adamant that she was not going home with me. And so I had to make a decision to place her with my mother. And that was only for maybe a couple of nights because my mother and him never got along. So he was always at odds with her and he didn't want her there either. So he went back to court and he made an emergency removal request and whatnot, so that he could have custody of her. So they granted him custody of her, and they gave me an order of no contact. I could not contact her
Was
under
there an
any
application,
circumstance.
was there an application made for that?
No,
For
that
the,
was just what they decided based upon the circumstances.
Miss Edmund, we are all intelligent people here. So let me see if I'm following this. An allegation was made. It seemed to have had some physical component or dimension. The child was taken to a hospital where I expect she was examined by a medical professional who said and staked his or her professional reputation on there is no physical evidence to corroborate the allegation being made.
Well,
Should
wait,
not that have been the
there
end?
was let me just backtrack. There wasn't physical evidence. There was no I don't want to there was no S word evidence, right?
Yes.
But there was physical evidence because what had sparked the entire thing was that she had gotten a cut skin the night before.
Oh,
So there was evidence of the five
okay.
or six lashes that she got, and that is what was recorded as being abusive, right?
Oh, that's good.
As being not being abusive, but as being what was found on her person. So
But that is not what, but is that what they went
but that was not the allegation that was made. The
which is the
allegation
point
was
I'm making?
S word.
But different nature. And that
Right,
is what I'm saying.
right.
Listen
So
to
then
me. You know what is amazing, Miss Edmund? That 9/10 of the people making these laws about hitting and not hitting, etc., grow up getting licks. Now, personally, I was a well-behaved child, so that wasn't the go-to
but
for
that's
me.
the thing. My daughter, at the point in time, she didn't used to get licked. She used to get licked when I am the type of parent you will do. And when I can't take it anymore after I've spoken to you multiple times, that is when I will hit you some thump. right?
Most
Okay,
So,
parents,
but
not you
six,
alone.
that is not what they went looking for. They
exactly.
what they went looking for, there was no evidence to substantiate the claim, the allegation, the accusation. So the 6 lashes had naught to do with it.
Right.
And they
So
didn't have,
because what they told me was that because the S word was what was initially um
used.
introduced, they have to treat it the way that they are treating it. So we made the statement, etc., and then she was removed the same night, right? She didn't go home with me that night. Then we went to court the next day, um, and it was decided yes, she has to be removed, and further further things had to be
Investigation.
done. We had to go to see the probation officer. We had to see the child psychologist. We had to um, defend ourselves in a trial. A date for trial was set.
I'm
Yes,
So there,
confused. I'm
yeah.
not
So there was.
confusing you.
go ahead, Arita.
I remember me, my then 3-year-old child, tilting a cup of tea at me, and I gave her 3 rulers. She went into the father's care. The child advocates from the Solicitor's General Office in Trinidad found themselves the Sunday afternoon entering the police station with the father and the child, not informing me of any action. I was almost detained and charged for what I don't know. And when I asked my little 3-year-old child what happened, I told him he beat me because I threw a cup of tea at you. And at that point in time, those lawyers, a Sunday evening at 5 p.m., came on behalf of the child and informing police officers that a charge ought to be brought against Ms. Clark on the grounds of child abuse. And I was so confused as to how it got to child abuse. And I could have been in a situation, one, where they would have taken away my child from me or may have been charged.
Mhm.
And my concern at that point, I was kind of upset because if it is you are alleging I am abusing the child as the child's representative, you ought to bring it to my attention, probably in writing, and then an investigation. In my case, they walked into the station, prepped the officers, ready to charge Ms. Clark for what? And you are saying that you would have disciplined the child, but that wasn't the nature of the investigation. I would have disciplined my child for holding a cup of tea at me. Is it that the law is applicable when they want and how they want?
I don't know how the laws are being interpreted. I don't know because my case is not the only case that I know of where those things have happened. Um, I cannot speak to what exactly the protocol is. I've been trying to find out, how things work in terms of when I just have a general view of how things happen, right? And it's basically what had happened in my case. We got disclosure. Um, they would send their representatives out to take the child to wherever, whether it's the police station or the um, well, no, they have to get the medical first because depending on what the allegations are, even if it's just physical abuse, they still need a medical certificate. So they go to the the health facility, get that certificate, and then they proceed to the station to find out what charges need to be laid. But again, in my case, uh, the police never laid any charges, but I had a trial.
But that is the thing I'm confused about because in order for me to be brought before the court, there has to be defendant statements or witness statements or respondent statements, a series of investigation from independent persons, non-biased persons. Then it has to go to the DPP if any charges ought to be laid. And I'm confused to date that many of us as parents end up before the court having to deal with fighting to get back our children from a system that placed them without the application of anything.
Yeah.
And we are fighting, finding attorney fees, paying attorneys, and it's because we are fighting because the system is somewhat trying to alienate our children from
Yeah.
us.
Yeah.
And we are all caught up in this battle with the state. And I am always saying, why are we having square pegs in round holes?
I think there's a gross lack of education in terms of public education where these things are concerned, because you will just be thrown into a situation and then you just have to act and you don't know what to do, because
But
one day you are going along your merry way, handling your business normal, you are a normal citizen, and then you get a phone call and then you have to spring into action and you don't know what to do. You don't even have an attorney, right?
exactly, because when they take this children away from us,
Yeah.
whether it be 1 week, 1 month, 6 years, 6 weeks,
Yeah.
they are now alienating our children from
From
us,
us.
Yeah.
causing us to become emotionally, psychologically disturbed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I am wondering, is it the state or the judicial or the, at that time, magistrate or judge's intention to create a society of mad parents? Because we none of we are going mad, I'm just asking the question because these state agencies are frustrating us to the point that many of us, we may react, but we don't, because we are intelligent enough to know not to react.
Okay.
And I'm
That's good.
concerned as to why these so-called judges and magistrates are taking actions into their hands. Because if it is, did you get a summons to appear before the court?
Yeah, I got, and the summons actually was inaccurately served, because you're supposed to, when in those cases, you are supposed to be served within 48 hours, and
Okay.
mine was done within 24, right? So I don't know how that happened again.
Well,
But
they
I
can
know when I
argue within
was
window. They can argue
discussing that
within
with my
window.
attorney, that is
Yeah.
what she said to me. She said, "But this was inaccurately served. When you issue the summons, you have to wait like 2 days, and
Mhm.
then you're supposed to be able to appear in court after that."
They're
But
going to see the urgency of the matter and the age of the child. They're going to argue that. That is what
yeah,
they're going to
that
argue.
is
That
what
they
they
will
said.
move. I know
That is
that.
what they
I
said.
know that. These are their classic responses.
And the thing about it is, my whole problem was there was no investigation done ever, period, right? So that even if it was like 2 days or so, you've gotten this on a Monday, you've gotten this report, right? On a Monday. Monday, we did the health checkup and all of those different things. Tuesday, I was in court, right? You did not go to my neighbors. You did not go anywhere, nobody, to the teachers, nothing, to speak to them to find out, well, what is this child, what has her behavior been within the last year?
Mm-hmm.
Who know this child? Who know this parent? Right? So that you had absolutely no information about me, about my child and my relationship with my child. Nothing. You had no information, nothing. But you have based your decision to remove her within 24 hours on her statement, solely on her statement.
And a solitary
These,
allegation.
and these are how this is how many children end up in homes. And parents, I remember in one case, the child said, "Daddy put us out. The court took us in, placed us in an institution. Mommy, no, our aunt knew where we were."
Now, let me just say this, right? I understand that in cases of sexual abuse and things like that, it is an urgent matter, right? I understand that in cases of even physical abuse, it is an urgent matter because a child cannot escape by themselves, right? It's very difficult. But there must be if you investigate one day, especially if you have a child who is being physically abused or so, right? Children cry all the time. When you go to do your first set of investigations where the child lives, there must be somebody who would have heard something, seen
Yes,
something, and then you would know, all right, we have a problem here,
yes,
right? It should, to me, it shouldn't be that as soon as you hear something going on, let us go and remove the child, especially if that is the child's only place of reside, of residence.
yeah, yeah. But Miss Edmond, I will share something with you. I There was an order issued by the justice in my matter. So my minor had to be subjected to a psychological evaluation. And one of the things they were looking for in that evaluation would have been the effects of parental alienation. Now, I was shocked when I saw it, right? Which would mean, in my mind, that the court was seeking to determine whether I was guilty.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
When I came to the court and said to the court, these are the circumstances. She went on a weekend visit. The next I knew, when she was supposed to have been returned, I was getting a call from the Aruka police station. The other parent was alleging that she had been abused in my home and in my care. He said he picked her up, damaged her foot. So I asked the officer, if he picked her up that way, how come you're not asking him why he took so long to take her for medical attention? They never asked that question. They never came to my home. The
Yeah.
police, before the Children's Authority had been notified, before the Child Protection Unit had been notified, the legal advisor for the Northern Division authorized him to leave the station with the child still in his care. Now, mind you, I am the sole custodial parent by high court order. They
Mm-hmm.
told him to leave with the child based on what he said. She was not allowed to speak. There was a cut under her foot. The allegation was that she was dug under her foot by my elder daughter using an icing tip and that she was beaten under the foot thereafter. The CPU was not involved. The Children's Authority were not involved. They were informed after the fact. But the police told him, take the child home with you. And they further advised him to go to the magistrate's court and to get a protection order on the child's behalf.
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
investigation whatsoever.
That was the same thing. A protection order was granted to the father in my case, and I was given no contact order. And it was really strange that your life can just turn upside down in the matter of 24 hours.
Yes, because all it took was for him to make an allegation.
Yeah.
Now, when I came to court eventually, it's a good thing that they sent him to the magistrate's court because her custody would have been adjudicated at the high court. The magistrate didn't have the jurisdiction to grant a protection order on her behalf.
Well, that is the strange thing that happened in my case, because I was also adjudicated, our matter was also adjudicated upon in the High Court. But in my case, the judge overruled the High Court decision.
The judge would be at the High
Because
Court.
no, it was a magistrate's court. It was filed at the magistrate's court. And all the decisions were made in the magistrate's court.
They say the judge overruled because a judge has that jurisdiction to overrule anything that a magistrate does.
Right. In the magistrate's court.
The judge does.
We got divorced and custody and everything was settled in the High Court, right?
Mhm.
But when the allegation was made, that was done through the magistrate's court. And everything that was relative to that case was adjudicated upon in the magistrate's court.
And that's wrong. Because if your daughter if you were the sole custodial, were you the sole custodial parent or was your joint custody? If
No,
you
I was
were
the
the
sole
if you
custodial parent.
were custodial parent by virtue of a high court order, then he could not have gone to the magistrate's court to get a protection order on that child's behalf. Now, when your matter happened, perhaps the children's court was not yet there. But in my case, he could not even have gone to the family court because
Yeah.
at the family court, masters are the ones who hear DV applications. So he
Hmm.
would have had to have gone now to the children's court where a judge would have had to have heard it. So what happened is when her worship was informed that I was the sole custodial parent and that it was a high court order, she immediately instructed him to return my daughter to my care
Well, this is it.
because
When we
jurisdiction.
went after the trial of a year and a half, right? And that ended, um, which they basically said that um, the other person was supposed to, they didn't really find much evidence of what happened, what was reported, and they still said he needed to remain 100 meters away from her and whatever, not to see her or contact her or anything like that. When we went to the High Court, because obviously they cannot adjudicate on the custody part of it, because obviously she has to be returned. That took us another year and a half in the High Court. The High Court judge said he didn't understand why it was there in the first place.
That's right. It should not have been there. The magistrate has no jurisdiction.
Yeah,
This is utter madness. How could it be that the people charged with to dispense the law do not
don't
know
know the law.
themselves?
Exactly.
I am telling you that no magistrate could give a DV protection order on behalf of your child because your child's custody was adjudicated at the High Court.
Hmm.
That is the law.
So even before the children's court and family court and all of that, it was a matter of law. And that is something that I never understood how it happened, but it happened. And it took
Before,
3 years to resolve.
before the Children Act and before the Children Act, they used to use the Domestic Violence Act and
That's right.
include the child or parent or something to that effect. And at that time, the law was clear as to who can make an application, the process in which the application is made, and the outcome of what is expected for the order to be made.
That's
But
right.
listening to this here, we didn't hear anything of this sort taking place.
But even despite all of that, the law is pellucid. That had no right in the magistrate's court. It did not fall under a magistrate's jurisdiction because everything had been adjudicated at the high court level.
Yep.
This is the incompetence that re-victimizes all of us.
Yes. Hmm.
This is the incompetence that criminalizes us.
To me, the court feels entertained when there are multiple applications between the different courts. And I know they're trying to prove something in law. So let us see how it irons out in magistrate's court, and let us see how it irons out in high court. And
No,
then we will see if a precedent is set on whichever matter. Because I have been through the same thing. Application before the magistrate's court, application in the high court. Which is superior to the other? Neither could disclose or indicate which. And there's where the confusion lies.
No, the High Court is the
the High
most
Court is the
superior court.
superior court of justice. Nothing
They
is
on their website, Aretha, on their website, the family court website, there is because remember I told you I was doing a book on um single mothers, the things that single mothers need to know about. And I was doing the research to find out what, well, obviously I already know that, but I just wanted to see for myself what information was there. And the information is there. The High Court is the most superior court.
That's right.
Okay, let me retrack a little. In my matter, custody, access, and maintenance was already established. Clear. If there had to be any issue with custody, it should have been brought to the High Court. Why the High Court? If the applicant at that point in time during our magisterial application of custody was not satisfied with the outcome of the magistrate's court access and custody order, he had 14 days to appeal the decision of the magistrate.
Yeah.
That was not done. Almost 10 months into a year after, the other party made an application for custody in the High Court. Yeah? After the application was made, he then went and applied for joint custody and overnight access in the High Court.
So he basically made an application because he wanted to be overruled. He understands the rule that the High Court's decision could overrule a magistrate's court decision. That's the reason that he did that.
Right. But in order to overrule any magistrate's application, if the custody application was still pending in the magistrate's court, then the High Court had the jurisdiction to remove all proceedings from the magistrate's court and bring it up to the High Court. And it has what are you saying, Lord, duly started.
Yes.
In my matter, it was a final order. So the contradiction in law, I'm not a legal expert, but I think from a common sense approach, is that once there has been a final order, in order for it cannot be appealed, the applicant who was then the respondent ought to have brought new evidence to substantiate that Ms. Clark is not fit to be the parent of my daughter or my son. And then the court shall entertain it.
Yes.
Now, you remember I went through my child becoming a ward of the court. I already got custody of my child. My child would have been alienated from me as a result of what you were saying. Say, Francie, Mr. Mitchell, the judge has heard.
Because of an error on the part of the judicial officer in the matter.
Right. And listening to Miss Edmond's case and my case, we are hearing several errors. And the question is, when we parent, as a parent, whether either or both parents, experience our children being alienated from us, what has the judiciary did to suffice or make up for the error that they made in law?
They don't make errors. Remember, I told you in the last conversation that we had that I was almost arrested as well because of an error that the court officer made in calendaring the next court date. The magistrate would have uttered the next date. I and my attorney wrote down the date that she would have said, and the court officer put a wrong date. So when I actually attended court on the day that I wrote down, she had already issued a bench warrant because I did not attend the wrong date. And when I'm there, well, I was there by myself because my attorney was in another courtroom, an adjacent courtroom. She was telling me, you didn't, and shouting at me and talking down to me like I stupid. And I said to her, no, this is the date that you gave us. I wrote down the notes and I was taking notes when we were here the last time, etc. When my attorney came in, he was most confused. He said, no, judge, this is the date that you gave us.
Yes.
No, I am not wrong. My officer is not wrong.
But, we can say that they don't make errors. But in the last few weeks, you have been seeing newspaper reports with multiple errors on the part of the judge, several errors, serious errors on the part of the judge. So clearly, they make errors. And then you always have the recording to go back to. And that is why you issue orders, especially when those orders stipulate your next day and time of appearance. You understand what I'm saying? But they
Mm-hmm.
never own up to their wrong. And we are making the point that when we as good parents try to protect our children from a toxic individual, environment, institution, we are the ones that are being painted as the abusers. We
Miss
are the ones that they look at
I,
as if we are intentionally keeping our children away from loving, invested parents who
Miss
just want to be a part of their lives.
I think
Mitchell,
Kevin wanted to say something.
let me hear Kevin.
Oh, I've been listening attentively, and I want to apologize to all the females here who you all share the same story, but I on the flip side of it. And in my instant, if I did get the treatment you all get, then my son would have been okay. The things that you all went through, if I did went through that, my son would have been okay. The actions that the officers took, everyone I'm hearing that take the child immediately within 24 hours, my son would have been okay today. Almost 3 years it took me to get supervised access to save my son from another injury until the injury happened. Where the officer said, nah, it have a court order. Nah, you have to send back the child. The order is you have to send back the child. We cannot safeguard the child. So I had to send back the child. The child keep getting injured. And I'm keep shouting it out in all different manner to the court, to the probation officer. Another, it was confusing as you have a probation officer in a matter where the child is before the court. Things are happening with that child while the child is before the court. So the person who is responsible to investigate and report to the court is the probation officer.
Yes.
Yes.
When you call the probation officer say, no, that is outside of my remit. Check children authority. When they check children authority, say, no, that is outside of your remit. Check the social worker. And when they check the social worker, now they say, no, it's the court. And when they go to the court, master, or look, I have all these things here, my child is endangered. Somebody have to come and say, sir, other than you, that the child is endangered. And I ask the question, who? The police ain't doing it. The social worker ain't doing it when the child is referred to the social worker. The probation officer ain't doing it when there's probation officer's report just keep coming with no investigation. The attorney seems to not know how to do it and why to do it. Children's authority saying, no. We just put recommendation by the court to make a decision. And 3 years, this child suffered numerous injuries where doctors saying, Daddy, but this child coming back with injuries? How much time we go write and get a medical report? Who is taking responsibility for this child? And I am keep gathering these medical reports until like a book, until the master make an error. And although he had all this information before him, only read the conclusion and recommendation of his report and say, I have seen nothing. You need to send back the child now in the atmosphere. And the last time the child come back, injured again, the doctors saw that pattern again and said, Daddy, no, we had to do something. And it's only upon that, when that happened, that's when Children Authority came in and said, no, give me the child, give us the child, let us put the child in a home. The judge saying, I can't get supervised access, let me put the child in the home. And I'm saying, wait now. So nobody don't want to take responsibility to safeguard this child now, but you want to victimize the child because you all made an error. The error is done already. Let's fix the issue. And
So you didn't even have access to your child?
I had the child, but I had to ensure that the toxic environment, the child had to go back there because
the supervised access was for the other parents.
Access on the whole, visitation access.
Just access. Physical access.
I had to respect the court order, even though there was signs of an injury taking place to that child. So that's why I'm saying I am in the flip side of you all. To say,
Kevin,
so quick to make actions for you all.
You hear what Kevin's saying there? He kept reaching out and saying, this child is being injured. He kept providing medical evidence. The lazy master, because all of them are lazy, and I'm saying it without fear, all they like to do is to read the summary page and to skim it in the hearing. But me see no problem here. Send the child back. And the child is injured again. Kevin kept bringing the reports. Kevin kept getting the medical evidence and saying, every time the child is sent into this environment, the child comes back injured. When finally they were willing to admit that that was so, rather than support Kevin, you know what they wanted to do? Remove the child from the concern the parents care.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to victimize the child and victimize the parent who was doing the right thing all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Why does the court do this to us? They criminalize us. They re-victimize our children and they victimize us because they were willing, after all that Kevin was able to provide, and he was not being malicious, he was being concerned. He's saying, look, this child is coming back injured every time without fail. He's taking the child to the doctor saying, Daddy, what you doing?
Miss Mitchell, you remember?
And you know, the thing about it is, if that child had passed away, then they would have been asking him questions.
No,
what
because
were you doing? Did you
why you never do nothing?
Exactly.
And I want to pay particular attention to this a particular incident that is currently, without fear nor favor, during the sessions of the court, the other party took it upon herself to not follow the family court proceedings and decided to make amendments to a court order and serve that amendment through her affiliation to the police service as a legal document. I was served that on my job. Questions was asked, what are the police doing here? I was looking like a criminal. The person served me the document, and upon looking at the document, I said, but wait now. But I was mailed a copy of this through the registered mail, which is a court order. So when I compare it, I realize, well, wait now. It's supposed to be a 2-page document, front and back, but this document is 2 pages separate. I said, but look, the font size looking different. And I compared that document for myself. And underneath the registered signature, there was something in red that raised my antenna. And it read, if you do not comply with this court order, your assets will be confiscated or you will be in prison. I said, but something had to be wrong. When I look at that, I said, but why in a family court matter? Custody and maintenance. Where this come out from? So I left my job immediately and went to the family court because I want to know who instructions is this? Because a police served it to me. When I reached the family court, the clerk, I said, well, I'd like to speak to the registrar. Apparently, when you go to the family court, the registrar and managers of the court seems to be distance from you.
Yeah, you can talk to them.
Distance.
They're not public officers.
They're not public officers. So I had a document with the register signature.
Exactly.
The clerk said, sir, that document you have there, that never come from here. And they highlighted exactly everything on the document. I said, well, where does this document come from? Well, you'll have to. So I reached out to the goodly manager. The manager took the report and told me to make a statement and thing to the police service. When I went to the police service fraud squad, they're telling me who received the document. I cannot make that report. The register, the family court is who have to come and make the report. I say, but it's not the register received the document. It's I receive it. If you want to go to the register, the family court to confirm, that's your investigation, but I'm making a report. This is how I received this. They took the report, they explained to me they cannot investigate the matter.
The registrar will have to say that his or her signature was forged. That is why that person will have to make the report. So they corrected that. But what they should have done, they should not have left that there because clearly there was a case of fraud. And they should have gone to the registrar. They should have reached out and ensured that a matter came out of it.
Correct. So I had to know. Exactly. I had to seek legal counsel to find out what it is. Am I mad? And that person identify all the problems with the document and say this is something serious. And they explained to me by law, this is an infringement.
Yes.
This is an infringement by law. This is a judicial officer signature.
Exactly. A registrar is not
this is law.
A court officer, like the person who will take the note.
So he wrote to the DPP office wrote back and said, we will send a request to the TTPS. The TTPS don't want to investigate it. Because of other incidents that I have reported against the TTPS and their conduct, I have been blacklisted by the TTPS. But I'm okay with that. Because they thought I could not have read and understand and remain. All the things that they did to me, it became like water on my back. Because I knew that they wanted me to behave a particular way, to justify.
Yes.
Even the master of the court sent me to do a psychiatric evaluation for me reporting to him that look how much institutional abuse and wrongdoings happening, sir. And you send me for a psychiatric evaluation. So when I reached the evaluator, now I asked the person, I say, are you investigating my claims? He said, no. I said, then how could you determine if I am speaking the truth or not? He said, well, I said, well, you need to go to whoever. And they paid for that. The family court paid for that. Paid for me to be psychiatric evaluated, but cannot pay for the child to go and seek counseling for all the trauma they have put my child through. Today, that same forged court order is up in the melee because PCA don't want to touch it. The ombudsman don't want to interfere with it. Judicial officer don't want to touch it. Nobody wants to interfere with that.
Nobody.
Because that kind of worms will tell persons that if someone could forge a judicial officer's signature or information of the court, and the court, which is the master, is not concerned about that, how much other issues are they not concerned of before the court?
Exactly.
What other issues are not concerned with before the court?
Yes.
That is why when they rip our children away from us, they don't care.
They don't.
That's it for them. And that is a laughing matter. I remember times you come from Tobago again, like you're living in Trinidad, and I'm like, nobody concerned with where the child is, the situation with the child. When I have to return to my mommy, you're going to stay again, they're going to lock you up, put my child through psychological trauma, and like it was fun for the judicial officers.
Yeah.
They don't care.
No.
Yeah, that's just another story for them to talk, something they could talk with in the lunchroom.
Yeah. Because we are apparently, we provide comic relief.
Yes.
And our children suffering on the side, our children going through trauma, our children being distressed, and it's not an issue of urgency.
You know what is amazing? If we, as parents, didn't see the need and didn't seek intervention for our children and left our children to follow the course and the path and to manifest the outcomes that would have been predetermined by their behavior, they turn around and blame us.
Yeah.
Negligent parents.
Yes.
They would turn around and they would because when I came to you and I said, this parent, assisted by the state's agencies, ripped my child away from me. I was the victim of parental alienation. You know why? Because you would intentionally telling the child negative things about me to try to poison the child's mind against me. That was parental alienation. When I brought that to the court's attention, you know what the court said? That's not an urgent matter. I'll hear it some months from now. But now that I have put things in place and I am protecting the child, you're asking the psychologist to see if I am the one guilty. That I am the one now alienating the upstanding parent. And I'm saying to myself, am I in a parallel universe? Because how come I alone understanding this? You are saying to me, when I came and I said to you, what this person did caused this child to need counseling. I have had to pay a counselor. When you read the counselor's report, it was enough to make you suspend his access. But then opposing counsel said, but Miss Mitchell is paying the counselor. How we know if the counselor being objective? Is Miss Mitchell money talking there? So you say, you know what? Let the SSU get involved. Let us get one of the many trusted psychologists on the court's listing. And the court psychologist comes back and says exactly what my psychologist said. They had no interaction with each other. They didn't see each other's report. They do not know each other. You know what you turn around and you say now? You need to keep the child in counseling. The psychologist said that you need to keep up the counseling. The same counseling I came and told you that the child needed since July last year. You now come in to tell me that I need to keep the child in counseling. I came and I told you that what this individual did caused the child to need counseling. You are telling me, but you need to keep up with the counseling, okay? It is very important. Are you not hearing yourselves? Why are they not connecting the dots? How come we could connect the dots, Miss Edmond? How come we connecting the dots, Scaffold? How come we're connecting the dots, Sarita?
Two things I want to say, Miss Mitchell, right? We are often accused of different things in the court and different areas of our lives as if we are unintelligent and all these different things, right? So they say because you ain't have a law degree, you ain't know nothing about court.
That's right.
You don't know how the law does work. You don't know. But like you can't read now, boy.
No.
Right? And most of the information that I have garnered is based on what I have read and of course experiencing different persons and such. The second thing I want to touch on is the fact that domestic violence cases will continue to rise. Why? Because the courts continue to perpetuate violence against victims.
Victims, yes. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
It often is the case that when you go to, first to begin, when you go to court, you have to be in the same court with the same perpetrator.
With your abuser. With your abuser.
On the same bench. I was on the same bench with my abuser. One person in between us. Right? That's the first thing. Then you still have, when you are going through this is what happened, this is what's taking place, etc., you are still granting access to that parent, and you know that parent is abusive. You're still granting them unsupervised access. And then you're saying that the parent who is concerned for the safety of the child, they want to alienate the child.
Because you're erratic and you're emotional. And you know what? You're being spiteful now. Now, let me tell you something. I'd like that you raise that point. Sometimes abusers are so sophisticated that one parent is abusing the other adult, but is not abusing the child. So they can say there, the person is not a danger to the child.
But we know that that is not true, because once the person to whom the abuse was perpetrated, right? Once that person is out of the picture, the abuse goes to the next person that is in the situation.
Not always the case, you know, Miss Edmond. There are times when the person will hit you. The person will do all manner of things to you. And the child is never subject to abuse. Because you know why? Because they know that having the child in their care tortures you.
Yes,
there is
but
that
okay.
level of psychosis in our society.
The thing about abuse, right? Even though in I would say in almost every case, right? Because where abuse happens, where it is physical, there is always psychological and emotional abuse. Always. So even though the child may not be physically be abused when they go, they are psychologically abused.
Right. And that is the other point we're making. If the court does not see a bruise, if the court does not see a broken limb, if the court does not see a black eye, then the court does not register abuse, you know.
Yeah.
Emotional and psychological abuse doesn't come up on their radar at all, you know. They talk about it as though it's important, but how do you gauge it? But then when you have a child obviously in need of the care of a traumatologist or a psychologist, then obviously there is abuse there. But
I think we have it backwards, Ms. Mitchell.
No, the court is only looking and saying, the father, when I said to you The child came back fearful. The child came back bedwetting. The child came back wanting everything black. You know what you said? But the father is not a physical danger. I don't see why he can't have access. Those were the judge's exact words. When I told you about the trauma, when I told you about the counseling, when I told you about the bedwetting and about the fears, you know what you said to me? But I don't see that he's a physical threat to her. Send her with him. Those were her words. So it's not me who have it backward, Miss Edmond. It's
no, I'm saying the courts have it backwards. In that
they make it.
When we come to the court and we say, all right, I want custody and access. That is my application, right? I want custody and maintenance of my child. No matter what court it is that we make the application in. The first thing you are looking to do as a magistrate is set a date for when you could come back so that you could start to hear the matter. You have not, what we have mediation for. You haven't done any investigation into these two people that come before you, right? So this is why I say I think we have it backwards in that you're making decisions based on somebody coming and saying something, and then you in the magistrate's court, I think it's not like the high court where you would have to submit paperwork and responses to different things that have been said, right? It's not like that. You just go to the court, you say, I want access, they say, okay, the date is so and so. And then you go now through the process, whatever that process might be. So when really and truly we should be looking at how did we get here, right? How did we get here? Did we get here because these two people, one has been abusive in the relationship, one has been, what has been happening in this home? We're not looking at that. We're just looking at, okay, I have 500 cases before me and I have to get rid of 500.
I need to clear this docket.
Yeah, I need to clear it.
You know, you could pay that? How much you could pay? Okay.
Yeah.
Yes. Next month.
Yeah, that's it. It's not people focused or people centric at all.
Yeah, but when you think about it, you're sending, even when you send people to mediation, a mediator is not a counselor, you know. And even when you send a child for counseling, you didn't send either of the other parties for counseling, you know. So you put in these two volatile individuals, you're putting one who is potentially a trigger to the other one. You don't know the type of abuse that another individual has endured, and you want this person to sit down across the table from his or her abuser and have a conversation, albeit through a trained, neutral third party. There are too many factors that are not taken into account.
Yeah.
Because Kevon has been abused. He has been abused by the other party because the other party understands the emotional stress that it puts Kevon under, the psychological duress, because every time that child had to leave his care, Kevon probably could not breathe for the entire weekend. And he is there worrying, what kind of injury this child coming back with now? Every second of the day that child is out of his care, nobody stops to think of the type of abuse, the type of trauma that Kevon is undergoing. Nobody thought of the kind of abuse, the kind of stress and trauma that I was undergoing, that I went through for those 24 days that my child was removed from me. Nobody stopped to think about what was happening with you, Miss Edmond, for those 3 years that your child was ripped out of your life. When they took Arita's child and made her a ward of the court and the child was not yet 3 years old or a little over 3, nobody stops to think about that.
No, they don't. They don't. They are just concerned, okay, this is the protocol, this is what we're supposed to do, and let's do that. We have done that. We have done our part.
But where are the professional and reputational consequences when they make these mistakes? And when our children suffer?
There are none. There are none.
That is why they're using the immunity for the purse. There's none. There is none. I sat before the court and you ever see, I watching this master before the court with all due respect, and I am saying to myself, but you not understanding as a father, as a man, as a judicial officer, what is going on with this child or have went on with this child. The only person addressed this is when I was took before the Children's High Court. When they make the mistake and the grant for my son to go to the ward of the state, I deliberately didn't send him. I took him from my residence and carry him somewhere. I said, I want to make a jail. I did all what I could do. I did all what I'm going to make a jail.
That's
when
right.
They came to search for him. They bring 24 police officers heavily armed. If you see guns.
For a child, to remove a child.
Authority, the barge in my house and said I have a court order to take the child. Mind you, only when the order came out, because I asked for the order, they didn't give me the order. When I went and I get the order the next day, I see by order both parties consent.
But you never consent
for me to make the child a ward of the state. So I said, but this had to be mad. I said, but I not said, son. First, they reach out on my job to tell my seniors that they have a court order for me to hand over my child. I had to put them in the place immediately and tell them I will turn in my uniform in the morning. Stay out of my business. When I went, the carry the application before the High Court judge, the Children's High Court judge, to take out a protection order against me. A protection order against me. And to now go into any premises that the child may be, because they think the child going through trauma based on what happened before. But they didn't study to safeguard the child before. They now want to go and get that child because they think the child went through all this trauma from before. So the matter was heard before the judge, and I would not bash all judicial officer. I would commend that particular judicial officer, that female. When that female started off in that court, she explained that children have rights.
That's right.
I don't want to hear mommy. She said, mommy, stand up, daddy, stand up. I don't want to hear none of you. Name children authority. I is the child today. You see me on top here? I is the voice of the child. You as parents have all right and responsibility to protect this child at all will. No court can't tell you to do that. That is something embedded in you that you have to protect this child at all will. Children authority is like the horn, and they will always try to take your children away from you. Just so. She said, but imagine if you as a parent fail to protect this child. Just how you, the both of your children was taken away from you all. Imagine that trauma that child went through to say, but like, mommy give up on me. How I end up in this situation?
Yes.
That is the voice of the judicial officer. She said, imagine that child thinking that my parent who so loved me, like they give up on me. Look which part I am. If nobody else is to protect your child, it's you.
That's right.
And if you fail to do that, imagine what is going on in that child's mind. And she deemed everybody from the attorneys that was there. She said she talked to the attorneys and let them know you all have a right to speak to each other, to get a common ground. You are not representing your clients. A child is in this pity and you are an advocate of this child before you are client to these people here. And this not supposed to reach to this. She spoke about that. She blasted myself and the mother, which I had to take because it's not who right and who wrong. It's you as parents trying to get, even if all it was claimed victims, you all still try to solve the problem quickly. So you was doing the right thing.
Yes.
And that is the role of the parent. Even though you're deemed wrong, you still have a responsibility to try to do right.
That's right.
And after that court, she dismissed everything and she explained to Children Authority, you have no right to take no child and make no child on no ward of no state.
That's right.
No section. You don't have it. Why are you doing that? There is a fit person. There are other things to do before this.
Yep.
And this is the child we're talking about, and she dismissed the matter.
That's right.
And I applaud her. You know why I applaud her? Even if I had to take licks too. Because, come on, as everybody, the voice of the child is what was speaking from that stand in that black robe.
Yes.
And I heard it. and I respected it, even if it don't come from the judicial officer. So I knew that their judicial officers can do right.
Yes, they are.
Yes.
Willing to do it and not take family issues as though they are criminal issues and though they are joke around the tongue. This is not jokes around the tongue when family come before the court with issues. This is serious thing that could affect a number of people.
Yes.
And it's not affecting for 2 days, 5 days. It could affect for lifetimes.
Generations. Because if that is his only child, and that child grows with that trauma is in the DNA of his next generation. And if there's not intervention, it continues to perpetuate itself. Now I understand what he said. They erred in deciding to make his child a ward of the court. The court erred when they said, I don't see this man as a physical threat. I am disregarding the fact that he caused some emotional and some psychological trauma. Send her again so she could be further abused and traumatized. And for that reason, I faced 3 contempt of court applications. And they asked for me to be incarcerated and to take the child away from me and to give it to him. I was prepared to make a jail. My lady, we don't know where the child is. I said the child is safe in the care of a trusted friend. Am I going to disclose to the court? You think I risk going to jail to come and tell you where the child is? Come now, man. I said, no, I'm not going to disclose. I didn't care how it seemed, but when I look at my child begging and pleading and saying to me, you cannot send me back there because I will not recover this time. I don't care what you thought of me. You could have made 100,000 orders. It was my right and my responsibility to safeguard my child. And now you come in at the end point and saying, you did come and say your child need counseling. Your child really need counseling in truth, and keep your child in the counseling. That is what I almost went to jail for. And you coming back now to tell me, I realize that, what you came here saying from before, it wasn't that you're just bad and spiteful and want to keep the child from the father. She really needed protected in truth. But then here's what you say to me. I need you now to sit down with a mediator and see if you want to send the child back with the same father.
I think part of the problem too is the way that they interact with people from the public, the people that they're supposed to be serving. That's part. They don't see us as people. They don't see us as intelligent. They don't see us as being able to be reasoned with. You have to tell us what to do. And you have to do it because I say so. I make an order. You understand? And that's the wrong approach. That is the wrong approach. The approach should be, these are people in crisis, and I am here to intervene to help the best way that I could to make the best decision for the entire family so that we don't have criminals being born.
That is interesting what you're saying, Ms. Edmond, because I keep saying, every time we talk about judicial reform and judicial review, we keep looking at the criminal justice system. But we don't realize that what these judicial officers are doing at the family and children's court level could very well be feeding the criminal justice system in years to come. If you don't have parents who are like we are, who are able to notice that our children need that intervention and then willing to make the sacrifice to get them that care, what is going to happen? It keeps happening.
There's no care of them.
They don't care. When a magistrate could say to a lady, you want your children, go home with them. Take them, despite the fact that the father saying no and whatever. And then weeks after, somebody breaks into the home and kills the mother and the children. And the magistrate continues about her life, unaffected.
Well, they fold them, Ms. Mitchell, and push it into the docket and they leave it right there. And next case, next.
Yes.
Next, we are statistics in the system.
Yes.
Our children make their statistical information. Our children have no empirical value to these magistrates and these masters in the court. our children are considered, I would say, and we all could say scapegoats. That's the next one again. That's the next one again. But until it hits their family or their household, it
It
makes a
won't.
difference.
It
Because
won't.
trust me, when their relatives appear before the court, I don't think their relatives get the same treatment like we do.
Of course not.
They don't. They
No.
can't. Because they will never put their children through any distress. They
That's
will
right.
never put their cousins or their relatives, whatever relatives, under any distress. But we appear to be black hen chickens in the system. Another statistic again.
Yeah.
It's because you're from a particular area, because you're from Tobago. In my case, I'm backward. Because you are lower level employed or you're lower rank in whatever military or division you work, you are nothing. Because we are the ones that they label and they continue to label in the judicial system. Look at the criminals who get bail, the amount of bail someone gets. Imagine I being a respondent in a custody case. I was sentenced to 7 days simple imprisonment, to pay $7,000 to the father, and to pay his legal fees for a matter still pending before the court. Is that ethical? Is that right?
Sometimes they just want us to throw in the towel, throw up our hands and say, look, that is it, yeah?
But
Exactly.
we are
Exactly.
parents. We know the adverse
The
effects.
kind of thing I'm hearing tonight previously in discussion. I really, really, really am amazed. I am really amazed because when you go to a court where two parties can't see eye to eye, it's because you reach there because there is no form of communication again. That's why somebody decided to go there.
Yes.
When you go there, you ask a third party to get into your business.
Yes.
Yeah. However, by asking that third party to get into your business, to be transparent in all aspects,
Yes.
cannot be worse than dealing with the person outside of the court. Could never result into that.
You don't
Never.
think so. You don't think so, but it's only when you experience it. That's
Exactly.
when you understand why
Exactly.
a lot of people don't go to court.
Exactly.
Yes.
It's like the lion's mouth is at the door of the court when it comes to family issue, and you push your whole body inside there, and then you realize you're inside, you're trying to pull out slowly. But it's like it's a comic and a game, and I'm passionate about it without fear or favor. Passionate
Listen to
about it.
me, you see, when you're looking at a case where it's just not a matter of two parents who can't speak to each other, when you see there is clear evidence that a child is in danger in the other parent's care, I have a problem with the court and the entire system adopting an adversarial stance against the responsible parent. Kevin has enough evidence to support that child, until that child could fend for himself, he cannot be sent there. There is nothing to discuss. It is not a matter of Kevin and the mother can't see eye to eye and they always at loggerheads. It is not a matter of that. Anytime the child goes there, the child is in clear and present danger.
But what about the fail?
That
What about
is, just now there is evidence that shows that my child was physically abused in this situation. You cannot send my child there. It's not me keeping the child away from a loving parent. We are not alienating our children. We are protecting our children. Because if my child goes there and turns up dead, Madam Justice continues to preside over family matters. The master in Kevin's case, if Kevin's son goes there and ends up so severely injured that he dies, the master continues. In fact, he might get a promotion in the next year and become a judge. Life goes on for them, but our life stops for us. So what I'm saying, Ms. Edmond, is it's not a matter where two people just can't agree, It is a matter where the police, where medically and otherwise, it has been established that these children have been and are being abused in the environment and often by the hands of the other party.
But Ms. Mitchell, there was a case where a gentleman called me. His two nephews are being verbally and physically abused by both parents. The grandfather in this case, made an application of a DV on behalf of the children against the both parents. You know what happened there? Until one of the child is 15 years old, is threatening to kill himself. And I don't know, I haven't heard from them in the last couple of months, 2 months. So I don't know, I have to follow up. What are they doing to our children? Because the children clearly don't want to be with mommy and daddy because they're drinking, they're fighting, they're carrying on. The grandfather is saying, I want to protect my grandchildren. And I'm making this application on their behalf. And the court is saying that they don't have the jurisdiction, they don't have the right. The grandfather is out of his league. So the question is, if in this case here, both parents can't protect the children, who's going to protect them?
Parents are the danger
So
to
then
the
what
children.
is the point of saying if you see something, say
Thank
something?
you. Miss Edmond, I'm now coming there. The police self telling you, if you had known and you had done nothing, you are liable to criminal charges. So then what is the point when somebody who is clearly interested and invested wants to step in to protect these children and the same system says to you, mind your business? What are you really doing? Where is the transparency? I do not care about the impunity, and I do not care that, let me tell you something. These judicial officers operate as though they're in a sovereign state within the state. So they have immunity and impunity. But at the end of the day, the judiciary is still an arm of the state, and there must be accountability and transparency. They are not a law unto themselves. And this needs to be at the forefront of any discussion. You want to talk about judicial review? Start with judicial officers. Yep. We have a right to evaluate the masters, the judges, and the magistrates that we go before. We have that right. I have a right to say what type of service I received or where I feel there was a disservice. Miss Edmond could write a book. Arita, you could write a book. Kevon could write a book. Tremaine could write one. I could write one. We are but 5 people. Do you know how many others like us there are out there? You know why?
There are many others.
Come the custom and the practice of the judiciary, and nothing is being done about it. When they have all these stakeholder discussions, we are the ones they need to talk to. We are the ones affected. We are the ones they need to talk to.
But you see, I am in control. That abuse of power and abuse of the process. So I am the one in control, not me, Arita Clark, the judge and the master and the magistrate. So since I'm in control of your life, I will take my time and I could do what I want. You cannot ask me a question.
And they tell you that.
Yeah?
And they tell you that this is my courtroom.
Yes.
So then how are you supposed to be educated on what steps you need to take or what actions you need to take or where you go from here?
Well, as one judge told me,
educating me especially in the magistrate's court, because in the magistrate's court you don't have an attorney.
Are these judicial officers exempted from emotional misbehavior and personal misbehavior? Because they are humans as well. Because that blatantly is the level of not being accountable for. Because if you listen to how they speak and carry about themselves, they sound emotional and personal at times.
Yes. Because one told me, you feel bad inside here. I go show you who's the boss in here.
Yeah.
Like, you're a bully. You're a bully. That is not professional language.
But in a lot of cases, they are. That is who they are.
But their oath of office is to serve the citizens and the Constitution in that order.
But you remember,
this is why I said earlier, Miss Mitchell, that the part of the problem is the way that they see themselves. You have an office that is to be respected, right? And is respected by the majority. We are not talking of the minority who have no respect for authority and those sorts of things. Once you are a law-abiding citizen, you respect the offices of the land, right? So when persons are coming into your courtroom, you already have that respect based upon the fact that you hold this office. So there is no need for you to condescend. There is no need for you to tell me, I am the boss in here. We know that. But there is a need for humanity, basic human decency, empathy.
That's right.
Right? That is what is needed in the courtroom. But too often, and I'm telling you, I told you the story of where I was sitting outside the court, and he probably was in his 80s, and the court, the magistrate was talking to that man, and I'm sure she was much younger than him. She was talking to him like if he was some little dog on the side of the road. You hear what I'm telling you, and this and that, and don't answer me back, and blah blah. And I was like, what? And I am outside of the court. I wasn't inside.
What about me
telling everything?
Me telling a high court judge, my lord, the child has issues leaving the home to go to access. And when the child sees the police station environment, she screams. She holds on to my leg, indicating she don't want to go. The father say, she playing mad, me and Rita Clark. Hear the judge, well, what? You really need psychiatric help? Miss Lady, I think I have to tell you to send you by a psychiatrist, right? I have to send you by a psychiatrist because I am trying to relate how my child is reacting in the building of the police station and entering.
Yeah.
Because you have the power.
Thing.
As we said in the last conversation that we had, the court is not equipped to make those kinds of determinations. So therefore, there should be officers in the court who are able to say, Judge, I think something wrong with this parent here, This parent needs to see, we need to recommending that they see a court-appointed psychologist.
Yes.
You as the judge, you do not have the legal standing or the medical knowledge to make such a determination.
That's right.
Because remember, we as citizens, we can cross the line and speak law to them.
Exactly.
They love to cross the line and as Mr. Kevin said in the last discussion, they want the social workers, they want to be the psychologists, they want to be the mediator, they want to be everything. And not apply the law.
Exactly.
Listen, if you are telling me as a layperson in the public that ignorance of the law is no excuse, then it can't be an excuse for you. The law is simple and straightforward enough that the common man could read it and understand it. You know why? Because he's expected to obey it.
Yes.
So don't then. When I first appeared before Madam Justice, at that time, it was sprung on me. That was back in 2013 to 15. He had put his papers before the court. And so he was worthy of some sort of respect. I didn't put my papers, because remember, you have to put your name, where you're from, and your station, your professional station. Madam, are you hearing me? Miss Mitchell, are you hearing me? This is how she was speaking to me. Do you hear me? And I said, yes, my lady. You're crystal clear. When I put my papers before the court and I stated what my profession was, and it was obvious that I have a master's degree, I was spoken to like a person.
Wow.
I had a little value at that point in time. You know why? Because clearly I have some education.
But remember, I think I told you that the man, the same, probably our friend, Miss Clark,
God bless me.
why are you looking at me in my eyes? I said, but you're speaking to
Hello?
me. I don't want you looking at me in my eyes. I said, but I'm entitled to, because failure to be looking, staring you in your eye, you would say I'm disrespecting you. But I
Yes.
don't want it.
When the
But I
court
refuse.
addresses you, you look at the court. Because remember, the court is the individual. The court is the presiding officer.
Which is
You
the
look
judge.
at the court. You are before the court. Yes.
She said, I don't like it. I don't appreciate it. And she slammed down the pen.
Yeah. Because you're making her uncomfortable. Because it looks like a challenge, you know. Miss Michelle, are you speaking to somebody there? Because remember, we virtual. I said, no, my lady, I'm not. But I saw you smiling. I said, I am smiling, my lady, because the court has been in constant communication with me. So I would have thought by now that the court would have my email address. She said, okay. I would have thought so too. And she's smiling there. It's everything they want to be on your case for. Everything. Always looking for something to pound you, looking for something to hammer you, looking for something to cut you down a peg. But you have to understand, if you are listening to a parent, you're looking at this parent, and it is obvious that Miss Edmond loves this child. It is obvious that Miss Edmond is acting in this child's best interest. I don't want you to be my friend, you know. I want you to be my child's friend. I want you to join with me to advocate on my child's behalf. If when you listen to Kevin, it is obvious that he didn't have nothing against the mother, you know, he's not even on she. He is on his child. Then I ain't asking you to be on my side. I'm asking you to be on my child's side. When you stop and you listen to Miss Clark and you realize, oh, wait now, she's not trying to punish the father. Miss Mitchell, she's not trying to punish the father. All of these are parents who are here in the interest of their children, seeking their children's well-being. We're not asking the court to be our friends. We're asking the court to be our children's advocates. That is what the court was established for. When any one of us in default, any one of us decide we're not interested, any one of us decide that we're not able and we don't want to be there to secure and to safeguard and to sustain our children's health and safety and well-being, that is where the court comes in. We are supposed to find a ready ally in the court in our children's best interest. May I ask you to beat up the next parent?
Miss Mitchell, when having coming back home here, my assumption of appearing in court as a parent is because you may have failed in your parental responsibility. I can believe I had to be before the court, arguing, debating, advocating, fighting to protect my child. I assume once if I'm brought before the court and the court could prove I'm unfit, then the court takes action. But if Rita Clark has been before the court for almost 8 years, going on to 9 years, and still the court hasn't proven me unfit, what am I doing there?
Exactly.
What am I before the court for?
You see how many, Miss Edmond, you were there 3 years. Kevin talk about 3 years. I was there 3 years and now it's back the next 2 years. And you know what's the joke about mine? Mine was a settled custody matter since 2015. I was there 2013, 14, 15, and now I'm back. 21, 22, and they set a trial date for 23. Calendar and legal years. Wasting time in the system when you could have dispensed with these matters quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah? And then if you listen to me, this is why I am saying this thing had to be, this is a mythical creature that they're talking about, this alienation thing. Because when you are allowing a parent to keep a child from the custodial parent, that is the court encouraging and enabling alienation.
But what about when my child goes to the other side for 1 month? I don't have any phone contact. I can't hear from my child unless she steals a phone call. But yet though, when we go back before the court, you have the learned judge and all the advocates and all the attorneys saying, Miss Clark, he's entitled to a phone call every evening between 5 and 8.
Hey.
So, excuse me?
I want to get involved in that too. That is something very ticklish. Ticklish. I was instructed. Think about every type of access. I have had it. Video on a court order, on a court order to ensure that the other party gets what they're supposed to get. And I had no problem. Video, voice, phone, virtual. I have supervised access all on a Sunday and all, virtual. The court bend all how to ensure that the other party gets what is due to them. And I have no problem with that. But the bottom line about it is always the concerned parent have to get the stick to ensure that the other parent, who seems to have no care, like it's like the court forcing you and the child to give whatever the other parent wants as some sort of satisfaction. So we're taking years to do that.
Yes.
Yep.
That is my issue.
Well, as we close this, Ms. Mitchell, you're saying something?
I'm saying that is my issue. It is the concerned, involved, invested parents that continue to get the short end of the stick. We are the ones who are, listen, they criminalize us, they demonize us, they victimize us, and they re-victimize us. And the errant party, the abusers, they are the ones with all the rights, even at the expense of our children's emotional, psychological, mental, and physical well-being.
And I often say socially, because when we, the custodial parent, have our children in our care, we have a program attached. Summer camp, visiting this one, doing that one. And when the non-custodial parent gets access, so I call my own the haphazard father, because you go to the court and always asking for an emergency application because you have the power and the money to do so. And the court allows it. And on many occasions, the matter heard Friday for me to hand over the child Saturday morning. Ma'am, my child got up late on a Saturday. Me don't want to hear that. Ma'am, the child, I haven't told the child, we don't want to hear, get the child ready. And when the child is late and giving me trouble because she wasn't prepared, the same child of a case who represents the child calls Miss Clark. Do you know you are late? And the child should be at the airport at 9 a.m. And I'm saying they never took my child's mental status or state into consideration. In the past, we would have had half of August, 1 month July, 1 month August. The individual will make an application today for tomorrow to say the child has to go. The child in camp, whether she's in camp, she's in karate and extracurricular activities. Why, for the last 8 years, me, one Aretha Clark, has to interrupt my child's social activities because our children have their friends, they have their little neighbors that they play with. Our children make plans to go and play with the neighbors Saturday, Sunday, or whatever days. And when we come and interrupt them, when they have to come back to reintegrate into that new environment, what have we done to them socially and psychologically? And the court always tell us, well, the child has friends by the other side. Who are the friends? Who are the acquaintances? We don't know.
Did court ever sought to determine where they're sending your child, Ms. Clark? Because I know many agents of state have been to your home. Do they know where the father lives?
Not directly.
Send anybody to the environment they're sending the child into?
No. That's not important. The main thing,
that is not important.
Ms. Clark, we want to make sure Ms. Clark, she house clean. Ms. Clark, she working. She's saying, she feeding the child. You know what I remember? An allegation was brought against me alleging that the individual bought bags and books, and I'm withholding it from the child. And that probation officer left Family Court, High Court, Trinidad to spend 2 days in Tobago, to come to my little 2-bedroom house in Tobago here, to ask to go to the wardrobe or wherever the child has the belongings that the father identified to locate. And I said, but the child, I complained to the child was screaming. I didn't come to you on that report. I came to identify the items the father bought for the child. So when I said, okay, then what about the school books and the uniform? The probation officer said that that's not important. That is irrelevant.
You come to my home and you make me open every cupboard, every container, The only thing you do is make me open my mouth. Like if you're a dentist, because everything in the house you make me open. You check every square inch of my home. But when the court says send the child with the father, nobody goes to see where the child going there.
Exactly. You
But
don't care about that.
no, no,
As
but
far as they are concerned, you the concerned parent, you the parent that has had custody, care, and control of your child for however long, they don't care about that. They care about
no,
the other party has said so
right.
and so, and
You
we need
just
to
said
find out if that is so. And you are already what's the word?
Adversarial.
Yeah, you are already you are not innocent. You are guilty.
you are guilty until proven innocent. Because
Yeah,
listen
you
to
are
me,
guilty. So
you
let
are
us
not
see.
worthy or due the presumption of innocence. And when you are advocating, excuse me,
But this is hard, you know. This is hard on parents psychologically,
Yes, it
financially,
is. It
financially
is.
it is as well. Because when we as a father, I show Kevin when you first held your infant, you said, "This is my love. I will protect you." Miss Mitchell, you'd have said the same when they handed you a baby the
oh,
first time.
listen to
Miss
me.
Edmond, myself, I had that notion that as a parent, I'm here to support you and protect you and nurture you until you could stand on your feet.
That's
And
right.
then we have the court system come out of the blues and the police and the children authority and CPU coming to disrupt our bond with our children and in our lives. And sometimes I ask myself if the system is trying to put children against their parents. Because
That,
sometimes when my child comes back angry, it takes about 2 to 3 days for my child to settle in. My child comes back withdrawn
yeah,
after every access. And when I'm telling the court this is happening, they say no, something you know, not in the last instance, but in the prior event, you think of a problem. And the problem is not me, it was my child coming back disturbed. I'm sure Kevin, you experienced that, Miss Mitchell, you experienced that, Miss Edmond, you experienced that. Our children coming back totally different. And then our children have to readjust. Does the system know what our children go through, what goes through our children's minds? How suicidal our children could become. If we weren't supportive parents, trust
yeah.
me, along the road and the route we took, our children could have taken their lives.
But that's what I'm saying. How come they're not seeing that it's interest on our part and that we are not being adversarial to the other party and that we're not being obstructionist? How come when we are being invested, involved, and interested, we are getting licks for it? We are being demonized, we are being criminalized, we are being victimized. Why? How come when they look at us, they're not seeing invested parents?
Potential, yeah.
Because they don't
Right. How come we
investigate.
not, how come we
They
not
don't
seeing
investigate. They don't investigate.
okay, Miss
That
Edmond,
is the
but
problem. They
how
come
come,
with their preconceived notions,
all
and
right?
that is what the truth is.
But then when you go all
Well,
around the world and you send your own psychologist, and your psychologist comes and says, what I have been saying from the very beginning, you're not going to concede even then.
No, you're not. Because as I said, they are never wrong.
but if you don't stop in the next 2 years, what kind of children? Because you will have parents who blatantly and want to hear no court, who blatantly would not appear in court, right? Where are all those children in the next 2 years when parents cannot or have conflicts or cannot communicate? What will become of those children in the next 2 years? Because these are the children, the 9-year-old, the 7-year-olds coming out into the primary and into the secondary school system. And if it is that we have a judicial system who should be impartial, who should be fair and operating in that tone, what is happening to our children? Because
So
we
then
are the
someone has
parents
got
who
fed
stand
up.
up with our
You,
children, you
Miss
know.
Edmond, and you are returning me to say, see this taking all my money, it taking all my time,
Again.
and I just going around in circles.
Mhm.
I fighting a losing battle. Just take the child and done. I
Yeah.
done. I done.
Yeah.
Suppose we had decided to adopt that stance, what would the outcome have been?
What would have been the outcome? I think Ms. Michelle spoke about it last time. It will be hidden until a forensic audit is done within the family court. and the courts itself to see Tom X came before the court 9 years after. Let us see where Tom X end up based on this adjudication. And I am betting you that more than 60% of the children that comes before the court go through some rough patches in their life that actually could make them a little better. But the most of them will be worse. Worse, because the kind of extent I'm hearing these parents going through here within the small circle, I tell you, it is quite amazing to know that someone has to go through 8 years before a court.
Yes.
8 years before a court.
COVID.
Hey, you have no trial date, no hearing date. So like it might go until the next 10 years, it look like.
Until the child is 18.
Well, listen, COVID brought out a very important statistic for us that a lot of our citizens are having challenges with their mental health, right? So we've seen that because of the fact that we have been isolated, etc., that a lot of people were struggling. But before that, people were struggling because of things, traumas that they would have experienced, right? And a lot of the traumas they would have experienced would have been part of what they would have grown up in, whatever abuses they would have faced in their lives, things like that, right? And remember I said earlier, one of the things that the court does not do is advocate for children to have proper mental health assessments after. Because after the case closed and the judge signed off and said this, I satisfied with this, that is it.
But the children struggling out there.
When my child was when the judge signed off and said, I don't understand why this case was not before the High Court, return the child immediately. That was it, you know. Didn't care for the 3 years that she was out of my care. Didn't care. Even though I was pleased with the outcome, the fact that that was not a consideration, right? And I am going to tell you something. My child has been in therapy on her own. She is 24, turning 23 next week, right? We're talking 14 years here, 14 years ago, right? And she had to do it on her own because obviously I couldn't afford it.
Yeah.
My insurance didn't cover that.
And suppose she couldn't afford it now.
Right?
She would take that trauma into the next generation.
Exactly. And this is the thing. A lot of people cannot afford it. Now there is a little more a greater thrust into the trust in resources into mental health care and all that now.
Yes.
Right? But still, it is not efficient, it is not effective, and you would still have the need for private care. And private care is not cheap.
But that's what I'm doing.
What I'm doing to it, and you're right.
I am doing this, Edmund. It is not cheap, I can tell you that. But it is private care. Tremaine is also doing private care. You can't sit there and rely on the state because all the state wants to sing the song is, oh my God, we have so few resources and our resources are so tight.
I went to the stress clinic in Shogunas a couple of weeks ago, and they gave my daughter a date in November for her next appointment. So what happens between then and November?
Well, what can I tell you?
Right? So yes, it is overburdened, and that's why I said it's not effective. Because when you are dealing with trauma, you have to deal with it every at least once a month, at least.
And that is take from a social worker's perspective, because, and you're right, Ms. Edmund, when a matter has finalized, there is no follow-up to know what happened with the children. And had there been follow-up, some of us may not be before the court again. Because the moment an incident arises, if there was a follow-up procedure, then intervention could have taken place. But when you have, like for me, we still in court 8 years. I don't know because there's no adjourned date for trial nor for hearing. So I don't know how long again I'm going to be before the court. If within 2 years my daughter starts to act out, who am I going to blame? Who am I going to turn to?
Well, the court is going to blame you.
No, but no, and before them.
You. And you can't blame anybody, but they're going to blame you.
You remember
blame you.
The recent instruction given, and since March, therapeutic intervention for the minor between Trinidad Authority and the different agencies. Trinidad Authority is attempting, yes. The other agencies haven't come forward. They're calling to ask questions to the child, and I said, I don't want that. If it is that you all have come to an agreed approach as to who will be doing the intervention, I don't mind. Now, you tell me after 8 years, a child placed in a home, see me dragged by police officers, see me handcuffed and body slammed while she's in my arms, sorry. You are telling me no one provided counseling for my child as yet, and still, we had the so-called, I won't say it publicly what my mom described them as, but those 3 individuals from the Solicitor General's office who said I represented my child, and to date, they have not seen any emotional distress in my child. No? Is Ms. Clark fabricating a story?
Well, Ms. Clark and Ms. Edmund and Mr. Kevin and Ms. Mitchell, you all are clearly the problem. Because it's only all you're seeing problems.
Yes, exactly.
And that's why I was saying, Ms. Edmund, they don't see emotional abuse. They don't see psychological abuse. They don't see trauma.
No.
And it's important, if there is not something of a physical nature or the other nature, apparently they don't register in the grander scheme of things. Yet you want to stamp out bullying in schools.
Yes.
Make the thing make sense. If you find that children being bullied and being told things to hurt them is something that we cannot have happening, then why is it that within the scheme of the family, you can have somebody saying something to a child to break that child down mentally and emotionally and to damage that child's relationship with the primary parent or the parent that the child has bonded with or the parent that the child looks to for his or her equilibrium?
But Ms. Mitchell and all of us here, I don't know if you noticed, when your child recognized that you and mommy or daddy and mommy fighting, I don't know if you all have observed that your child become withdrawn.
Very.
Your child look as though that they're reflecting because the child is seeing it. Today I put on this dress here.
They are trying to process it. They just don't know how to process it. They don't understand. They just know it's not the norm.
I put on this dress here tonight on a holiday, and my 9-year-old is asking me, are you going to court? I said, in the night on a holiday? She said, no, it's Monday. But are you going to appear in court? Because in her mind, she's thinking that she knows the matter isn't finished, but you can imagine what she's going. I can't say what she's thinking, but you can imagine what she's
that is a trauma that the judicial system has to take responsibility.
But it doesn't register.
This is a criminal matter. This is a social matter that taken 8 years to deal with. And the judicial officer has to take blame. The administration has to take blame. Because that is the child questioning it. That child is questioning to wonder if something is wrong with her,
Is she causing it?
Yes, exactly. And that is my... And I'm saying it publicly because if today or tomorrow something happens, the first thing they would say, that is why the father wanted the child from the mother, because that happened. They wouldn't see that the child was pressured for the last 8 years.
Yes.
I'm telling you, I remember that day when June 2020, when that learned judge made her decision to say it's Friday for Saturday. And that child, that morning, we got to the airport at 11 a.m. When I done a car wet down, she stripped down her clothes in the car. She fought. And I'm in tears having to drag my child through the airport to not to breach a so-called custody access order that in my case. And I'm forced up to now, even with her schoolwork up for 4 months. Yes, they would say Miss Clark breached the order. But for the last term, because that child has not been distracted, her handwriting has improved tremendously. Her art, look, she drew this to me, drew this tonight and showed me this. This is her artwork, right? This is show that the child is reflecting, the child is focusing. When that child comes back, handwriting, you wonder if it's a child who's dyslexic. Her thought pattern goes off. The thing now she's having discussions. Yes, mommy, no, mommy. When she comes back, it's door slamming. Behavior out of it. And the court tell me nothing wrong with that.
Yeah,
Let the child go by the father.
of course.
Where is the problem?
No, I would like to testify. I have seen for myself, as much as we will talk about institutions, I've seen institutions stepped in matters like that. And in access, I have seen police officers stood for the right of the child and explain to the parent during that access when they saw that because it had a rift and the father went for the child and the child was bawling not to go. And the police officers stood and stated to both parents that child is not leaving from here tonight.
You say what?
That child is not leaving from the parent care that night and told the man, and they went to the court and represented what took place that particular evening. If the court decided to send back the child, it is not the fault of the institute, but the fault of the judicial officer. And the court heard the officers to say, we went to the father so that the father will maintain the peace. And we saw that child literally bawling to leave. We have to protect and serve, and we made a decision to not allow the child for safety to go into that atmosphere and let it represent the court that we said so, and then you all could find a way to treat with it after.
Kevin,
so I have seen
my child outside this, I will call the station, Scarborough Police Station, having hand over the child to the father where she didn't want to go, was body slammed in the back of the vehicle, head shoved back into the vehicle. And when I went back into the Scarborough Police Station to indicate that my child has just experienced physical abuse, ma'am, we don't want to hear you, let the man go with your child. I brought an application on behalf of my child, which took 2 years. And up to the day in 2022, nothing came out of it. Nothing. Magistrates refused to hear anything of what happened to this child. I remember taking my child to the Scarborough Health Center and the district nurse observing the child's behavior. I said, no, I just got it from the father, and they recognize something is wrong. I have a document where they recommend counseling for my child at that time. And I have an institution called TRHA, who told me, Miss Clark, we are not going to provide counseling for your child before you have a custody matter before the court. You are speaking to me and my heart is hurting because it hasn't been any avenue that I never tried for intervention for my child. And you have the systems who can help. The serious police also intervene. You have the systems where they could help. But because of I don't know if it's the ranking of the individual, we're not intervening. But today or tomorrow something happens to this said child. I hope not. The same system will want to bombard my confused and distressed mind to ask me thousands of questions when they now have the authority to intervene and do something for this child. It hurts me. I want to cry.
And the thing about it is, Arita, you know, I worry sometimes that if something like that were to happen, the fact that your matter is so complex and so long before the court, that would be used against you.
Yes, it will.
I worry about that. Because it happens.
I've been before 3 judges, you know. This is my 3rd judge, you know. And before a 3rd judge. I'm sure.
And I don't trust the judicial officers. I don't trust the magistrates. I don't trust the court system, the justice system. I don't trust it in this country.
I don't either.
There's
I
nothing to
don't.
trust. And I will advise you, get help for your child. There are, let me tell you something. You could get a professional. The professional does not have to be stationed in Trinidad, because there are many of them here who are only doing online sessions anyhow.
Yeah.
World, listen to me, the world is now literally flat in the sense that you can stay here and access the best of care in any part of the world for your child. And I've been saying this to her. When I got my child back after 24 days that she was alienated from me, one look at her and I realized this was not the child that was taken from me. And we realized, we determined that our love and all of our good intentions was not what my child needed. She needed the assistance, the intervention, and the support of a professional.
Yeah.
And within 10 days, I got professional help for her.
But Ms. Mitchell,
it has never stopped. And the matter was ongoing. I don't care. You cannot tell me, because if something goes wrong and sitting there and waiting on the court, it will go wrong. They're going to turn around and they're going to blame me. They are going to blame me.
But you know, Ms. Mitchell, as I said, I have a never-ending matter. It appears as though it's that in this case.
Yeah, but you have a never-ending responsibility to your child. Before
Yes,
the
I
matter
do.
that never ends, is your never-ending responsibility to your child.
Yes, that's my
You
obligation.
are your child's first advocate, not the Solicitor General appointed, not anybody from the Children's Authority. You are your child's advocate. That is why, like Kevin said, he was willing to make a jail. I was willing to make a jail 3 times. First, contempt of court. Second, contempt of court. Third, contempt of court. When they say, give the child to her father, send the child with her father. If you don't, I'm not doing it, because I realized what had happened to her and I saw what could potentially happen to her. And because we know the police in this country are so professional, and because we know they get up and they do what they have to do so quickly, it took them 7 months in the first instance and 9 months in the second instance, because they work so quickly. So you interviewed a child in February, and when I went to court in July, the report wasn't ready. When I got the report in November, they spelled the child name wrong, even though she wrote it in block letters for them. They still spell it wrong, and then they put the wrong year. They put something that happened in 22, happened in 2020. I had to go and get them to correct that. So it took me between February and December. I had to submit by the 17th of December. You know when I got these things in my hand? About the 12th. After having to stick behind the police. That was almost an entire year. You have to be a child's advocate.
Yes.
You cannot sit down and wait for them, because I saw the damage that it did to my daughter. She struggled. And I am seeing now the significant change, that the continued counseling. We are not rich people. But when I look down the road to the generations to come, I have to take that trauma out of my child's DNA. That cannot be the legacy that I leave on this earth. Get help for your child. Our contemporary, she doesn't trust the system either. And she has gotten help for her children. She has gotten help for herself. I have gotten help for myself and for my child. Outside of the system, you just have to do what has to be done. We are not going to allow them to make us statistics, because when they look at us, they have already classified us, I refuse to carry the label of that stereotype.
Yes.
You got to do it. I think you have to do it. I feel your pain, I had a good support system. Just like how I joined the support system that carried me as a male. And sometimes I used to cry and think in the night and saying, but this had to be a madness. This is madness. Why? Like how I the enemy of the state? Am I the enemy of the state? And then I realized that you are in this situation because you could handle it.
Yes, I've been told that.
Yeah, you have in the situation because they can handle it. And it gets easier. But in the interim, that you have to find that leverage. I've went to a lot of special people to assist me. I've paid my money and went to that. I didn't have it. I've went from pillar to post. And everybody's saying, why I keep going? Because I had to get guidance as to how to remain calm in this situation and how to treat with it from a different eyesight. As the parent too, not just the child. The parent needs that guidance as well and supportive system to treat with it. So it's not only the child, because you don't want to make wrong moves when you're supposed to be making other moves. So I have still had to write a journal, let the child express his or herself, and these lovely things get parental guidance, how to treat with the child. So you also have to get that help.
Yes.
Yeah.
You have to get that help. And it will all be a story that you'll have to look back on, that somebody will have to depend on your strength that you went through to go through it too. But in the meanwhile, the little warrior hat on. In the meanwhile, not the storyteller, the warrior hat on, because you have to get through the storm.
Yeah, you have to. You just have to. It's not cheap, but I cannot afford not to do it. If you understand what I'm saying, it is not inexpensive. But when I look at it, I cannot afford not to do it, because not to do it now could short circuit her future.
But for me, going forward, as you indicated to me, I will have to look for international assistance or external. Because every time I go somewhere and they see color of the child, they see me.
Forget all the nose. Finally.
Yes.
Because a lot of them do work for the state as well. So they are fearful to come to a court to say, I say from my professional standpoint, this is wrong.
Yeah.
Because I have been told in confidence when I went to one of the psychiatrists, a mature woman, and when I explained my situation, you know what she said? She said, no, masters is do wrong things in the court and make wrong decisions. Because her experience at that age will have told her that a lot of things happen wrong. But who is willing to say this?
Nobody.
Who is willing to say that? Nobody.
Nobody is going to risk their career to speak out and say anything concerning it. So it will continue to be perpetuated. We will continue to get the short end of the stick, and we have to deal with the fallout at the end of the day. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
And then the wider society will wonder why it is and how it is. The country is the way that it is, how we have so much crime and all these different things.
Yeah.
But this is the root of it.
Yes.
These things are the root of it.
They tell you that, Ms. Edwin, this is my job. I have my bills to pay.
I want to put a statement in another context. I've been told by attorney already that remember, use just one matter from the thousands that they see, right? They may never have to deal with you. I reverted in my mind for my strength that you is just one judge, that I don't have to see you again in the rest of my life. I have to see my child.
Right. That's
I
right.
have to see my child. So when you operate in a particular way, I have to operate a particular way. I don't need to see you for the rest of my life.
That's
But
right.
you see my child, I have to see my child. So I have the same stance just like you.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. Because attorneys will tell you, I'm afraid to cross the judge. Even though you are right, Miss Mitchell, I am afraid to upset her because she makes attorneys' clients suffer. And how many, when your matter settle and you gone, I have other clients who will have to face Madam Justice. And I don't want to upset her. You are just one matter. And like Kevin said, I don't have to see Madam Justice again after this,
Yes.
But I have to face my child, and I will have to live with the consequences of failing her or coming through for her. And I decide I am going to come through for my child.
Yes, please. So as we are closing here tonight, we had a very healthy discussion. a lovely 2 hours, motivational, inspiring, and thanks to 3 of you. Thanks to the viewers. Ms. Michelle,
As
anything you'd like to
always,
say
it has
before we
been a
leave?
pleasure.
What's that?
I said, as always, it has been a pleasure.
Thank you. Ms. Michelle, would you like to close first?
What can I say? Apart from the fact that we have to continue to advocate for change, we have to continue to voice these matters, we have to get together and discuss these things because, as Ms. Edmond put it so succinctly, if nobody does anything about it, it's going to continue to perpetuate itself. And I believe that each of us here, each one of us is committed to ensuring that we advocate for change because we have gone through this so we can help others through it. So I'm looking forward to the next time that we get together to have such a discussion or another discussion because there are so many layers and there are so many different topics, so many things that we have to look at. So I just want to thank Ms. Edmond and thank Kevin for coming on this evening. Thank Arita for making the sacrifice. I know that we are all looking forward to getting together again, and I will invite and encourage each of you, any topic that you can think of that would be worthy of discussion, please let us know so that we can get together and continue to educate, inform, yes, encourage and enrich us through our discussion.
I have lots of topics.
Throw them out, send them our way.
And we ain't tackled the TTPS yet, eh? Kevin?
As for them.
I have a book. I have a book. I have a professional book. A really professional book.
That might be
I have a professional book.
With the TTPS?
Yeah, I have a professional book.
Thank you very much. Good night, Trinidad and Tobago. Good night to the world. Good night, everyone. See you next time. Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Bye.